And hi everybody, welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. Well, lately there's been a wave of homicides pervading America's inner cities, rather. So what's causing so much violence in urban America? Let's take a look.
Just weeks after the shocking killing of Hadia Pendleton, days after she had performed at the president's inauguration, another Chicago teenager, Janae McFarland, was shot dead hours after her sister sat on a stage listening to Barack Obama appeal for tighter gun controls.
I know this is not the first time this country has debated how to reduce gun violence. But this time is different.
The tragic passing of these two young women brings attention to a homicide epidemic ravaging America's cities. This year, Chicago saw over 40 homicides just in January, and it's not alone. From Philadelphia to Omaha, from Oakland to New Orleans, the urban U.S. is in crisis.
So when somebody says, well, we have to have a discussion of culture and gun violence and culture, yeah, but that doesn't mean you don't have also comprehensive criminal background check or an assault weapon ban.
What's causing the violence? Why has carnage gone on for so long? And what can be done beyond gun control to replace despair with hope?
You don't know how hard this really is. And those of you that do know how hard this is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No mother, no father should ever have to experience this.
Obviously a lot to get into. I want to reintroduce the panel. We have Dee Dee and Bill and a new guest. John, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from.
Yes, hi. I'm John Paitakes from Seton Hall University. I'm a professor of criminal justice. I worked in the field of probation for a number of years, was on the state parole board, so combination practitioner.
Great.
And
so you have a lot to say on this topic. I mean, so let's start with you. I mean, why this surge in violence in inner cities? It seems to be now more than ever.
Yeah, you know, there's a combination of factors, I think. I don't think you can pinpoint any one thing. School dropouts, you know, kids drop out of school or whatever, what do you do? So, you know, they're right away gang members are going to try and solicit them to join the gangs. If you drop out of school, what can you do as far as work or whatever? The quickest way to make money is maybe selling drugs or whatever. So school dropouts is maybe where it starts. And then, you know, their peer pressure, the neighborhoods they grow up in, if it's a high crime area, economically depressed, kind of goes along with, there's a theory actually that came out of Rodgers, broken windows theory, that says when you have vacant buildings and dilapidated buildings and people leave the area, then gang members and you know, vagrants take over the area, and all of a sudden, you know, becomes prominent for that. So in a lot of those big cities, that's what's happened to some extent. In addition to that, we've had a lot of police layoffs, if you've noticed, especially in Chicago, Newark. Many police departments laid off a large segment of law enforcement people. So you had less people. So
the combination of the two is just a recipe
so it's just
for
a combination
disaster.
of things.
Yeah, literal disaster. Hold that thought, Bill. I just want to introduce our another panelist that we have via Skype. We should have Basheer Jones joining us. Basheer?
Hello, how you doing?
How are you? Basheer is the head of the Basheer Jones Foundation, a community organizer and a youth counselor. Welcome, Basheer, to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I truly appreciate it.
Great. Curious your thoughts on the topic of sort of the surge of inner city violence. What are your thoughts?
Well, the first thought, first and foremost, thank you so much for the invitation to be on this great show. Second, you know, when we talk about a surge, I think that it is not necessarily a surge. I think that the violence that has occurred within the inner city has always been going on. But now we are refocusing on it, and that really hurts my feelings, and as I'm sure it hurts a lot of people who are working in these type of communities all across the country. For those who are on and in the grassroots, we know that these problems have been existing for a very long time. So it's sad to say that, or it's sad to see rather, you know, what happened in places in the suburbs. That almost highlights what's going on, or what has been going on in inner cities all across the country. So it's not a surge, it's always been going on, but we're finally focusing back on it.
Right, I mean, but you say focus, so the reason we're focusing on it is in light of the tragedies in Sandy Hook, in light of Chicago seeing, you know, over 40 homicides in the month of January alone. I mean, this is what it took to get us to the forefront of something that's existed forever, so you say.
Yeah, for sure, without a doubt. I mean, I live in a city, my city here, in the city of Cleveland. CNN recently did a poll of 5 most violent cities in America, and Cleveland, Ohio was ranked number 4. The violence is not something that's new, but and the violence in Chicago, which is a close neighbor of ours, is not something that's new. Those homicides that are taking place, it has been going on for a very long time. And I think that we stop focusing on what's going on in the inner city because the violence is so prevalent and so consistent that it's not something that we like to talk about. We almost become desensitized to what happens in the inner city, but something goes elsewhere.
But I do think John has a point. Discussing the layoffs of the police and sort of the surge of high school dropouts. Bill?
Sure, and to connect the the two gentlemen's thoughts here. I mean, there was a famous sociologist named William Julius Wilson who actually, a lot of his work came out of Chicago, focusing on Chicago back in the 70s and 80s. And what he found was you had first a migration of sort of the black middle class, white middle class, primarily black middle class, out of these urban areas. And his story was that then took many of your business people, your teachers, and you were left with a lower income, impoverished sort of segment of society, and then that sort of really took out that stability. And then crime started to rise. We got into the 1981-82 recession, which was basically, people talk about the Great Recession for everybody, but 1981-82 recession, that was sort of almost the Great Recession for Black America, where that then ushered in, dramatic increases in crime, the crack epidemic. Became much harder to police in these areas, and so you got this downward spiral. And back to your point, what I think is now people have strategically taken what's happened in Newtown, taken what's happened in Aurora, taken what happened in Virginia Tech, and said, which have been predominantly white communities, and said, hold on, this is now people say, oh, it's affecting me, and now many people in our inner city areas are now coming back and say, hey, hold on, time out. We've been at this for several decades, and so you need to include us as a part of this conversation.
I mean, but that said, Dee Dee, do you think we've become sort of complacent when it comes to urban violence?
Well, I think that the focus on gun control is ridiculous. I think you need to double down on guns, and I think you need to double down on police having the money to make sure that we're safe. Look what Rudy Giuliani did. Look how terrible the city of New York. It was very dangerous, and things were not good. And then when he cracked down and he made sure it was safe, all was well. I mean, well, not perfect, but a much safer city now. So I think the focus needs to be the other way. You need to make sure that the police are able to police and have the money to do so and to keep folks safe. Because look at Chicago. They have a terrible murder rate and they have gun control. There are no guns. Well, that's a problem.
But the problem in Chicago, that people have been pointing out, is that most of the guns that have been coming into the city, they're not from the city, right? They're coming from outside.
So
no, but it's coming from outside, which then suggests, if it can infer what you said, that you instead of sort of state and local types of bans or laws on checks, that you need some kind of federal apparatus that sits over all of us. Plus, then you also have to think, okay, now why did the young person drop out of school? Because of mom and dad.
Because of crime.
No, because mom and dad didn't have a job, weren't getting education and training. Why is it now young kids are having difficulty staying out of trouble? Because we don't have after school programs that can help to mediate those other choices.
Bashir, what are your thoughts?
For us to suggest that if we just add more police officers, that it will make our community better, is really, you're missing the fact that there is no relationship between police officers and community members. When you have young people, and I'm in schools every day across this country, when you have young people who can care less about the people who are supposed to serve and protect, and even better than that, here in Cleveland, Ohio, recently you had a situation where police officers were chasing a car. That was in the car was a young black male and a young black woman, and when the police officers finally caught this car, they shot into the car 137 shots. Now, they said they did it because they heard a gunshot, but come to find out, no gunshot happened. This goes on all across the country. So in saying that we add more police officers, that's not going to change the situation. The situation is much deeper than adding more.
Okay. Yeah. What about this idea of the stop and frisk method. Is that an effective way
Yeah, I
of
wanted to
bringing
just
down
respond
crime?
on the police officer issue. Not just adding more police officers, but in New Jersey, and I'm not sure how it is in Ohio, there's community policing. It's a special 2-week program that now is mandated in all the police academies. And that's where your school resource officer comes, and we have an officer in plain clothes in the school system, and not just for law enforcement, but to build relationships with the students. So the school systems that have that have had more success. Now, when they laid off police, what happened was they reassigned a lot of them to other detective duties because of the crime rate or whatever, and they pulled them out of the schools, which I think was a mistake. So I do say that if we hire more police, they ought to be more community policing oriented, working in the community and in the schools as schools resource officers. So that's what may help.
Agreed, but more safety and more police, I mean, you have to have that before you can have anything else.
Dee Dee, I want you to hold that thought. We're going to continue the conversation.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. The voices in my head are telling me we must go to break. When we return to Fresh Outlook, we'll continue our debate over urban violence, what's the cause, and how do we help keep it in check. We'll be right back.